Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Property AI Report. This is your weekly digest of all things property and AI, brought to you by me, Mal McCallion, and my co-host and good friend, Matt Goddard. Matt, how are you?
I'm fantastic, man. My voice is just about recovered from Wednesday at Wembley for the Oasis gig.
How was it?
Frenetic, raucous, incredible.
Good words. Excellent. Yes, I'm going to do something slightly different in that I'm going to Coldplay in a couple of weeks. So I think it's going to be a different vibe, I would suggest, than your very cool Oasis gig. But
That's who you smooch at that, Mal.
That's very true. Thanks for the top tip.
You're welcome.
All right, so we have plenty, oh my days, so much to get through. So we are going to kick off with our property news. All right, this week there's a lot about portals. Now, this may surprise you because basically we talk about portals quite a lot on here. But honestly, this week there is just so much that's been going on. We're going to start with one of the new free-to-list property platforms called Jitty. Now, I am a fan of Jitty and the guys behind it. I think it's been around for about 3-4 years now, I think. And basically was backed by Google a few years ago. They got a couple of million in there. They've now got another 3.8 million, Matt. And they seem to be, really focused on making it big here.
I certainly do. And at first I became aware of them was at Property Portal Watch over in Barcelona last, I think it was October, wasn't it? And Graham did a presentation on the screen, and it was just at that sort of early on stage of talking about how AI search could be revolutionise the portals ultimately and our property search. And so what Graham and the team have done there actually has led me to think quite a lot of features in portals now exist, to the extent that Zoopla announced this week an EV specific search filter, and because of Jitty, I just assumed that was something that everybody had access to. But there's much not cutting edge, because obviously it's been around for a couple of years now. Have Graham and Jitty been going?
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I think it is what they've been trying to do. And I think they've been almost pioneering this from one angle is they've been trying to get the idea that you can search by lifestyle and various different things that aren't set filters. And I think is a real stark contrast with, as you say, what Zoopla's announced this week, which is this very singular EV search, so you can choose homes or find homes that have got an electric vehicle charger outside them. That within Jitty is basically almost like a kind of table stakes thing. And I think that when you look at how AI, particularly agentic AI, is going to change search, then people are just going to be talking about conversationally talking to their AIs and to their portals and trying to find the right property for them just from very low information. I think one of the things when I look back at portals over the last sort of 20, 25 years, actually what you were forced to do, or and have been forced to do, is to make a decision very early on about certain things you want in a property. You're always asked, what price is it? Whereabouts do you want to live? And how many bedrooms do you want? And those things are actually can sometimes be quite fluid. And actually, you're not quite sure whether if I borrow a little bit more, I might be able to go a bit higher. I might actually choose a different location, or I might choose different beds if the garden's big enough to shove a office in. But because you have to make that decision early, then you're almost locked into it. And then when the lead goes through to the agent, then the agents are always saying, this buyer said they wanted this and then they wanted that and all that. So I think it's just going to really free people. And I think, again, just it's a good example of an early kind of stage business that's almost MVP'd this around actually just describe what you want and then see what the results are. And I think it's really good.
I think for me, that Jitty, and certainly when Graham talked about it at the time, it was using AI in 2 or 3 different places. So one of them was that, as you say, natural language searching, being able to say and describe what you want rather than ticking boxes and attributes, which leads you down a certain channel, which means that the agent then really has to work quite hard to say to you, look, you've said a 3-bed with outside space in Kennington, but actually I can get you a 2-bed with no outside space in Kennington, or a 3-bed with outside space in Camberwell. And the agent's then got to help you make those decisions because you've been almost blinkered and painted into the corner on that. But Graham was doing that. But if I remember correctly as well, he was using AI on the pictures to draw out certain features as well by saying, you've not actually mentioned the description, but this is clearly by water, or it's got certain attributes that maybe haven't been listed. I don't know, exposed fireplace, that sort of thing, which again means that you don't need to be worried so much about the attributes in the CRM or the specific description that's typed up. And I think the third part that they were using was they were using AI to go off and get, with consent, listings from estate agents' websites, weren't they, as well? So actually bringing together the portal via that methodology, which is not just a one-size-fits-all approach to it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, to be fair to them, I think they were feeling around a little bit as you do when you're early stage to see what the business model is going to be and exactly how you're going to complete this. So yeah, whatever they've been saying to the investors, and again, so it's led by REA Group, so the Rightmove of Australia, to the tune of 3.8 million. Whatever they've told them has obviously worked, and so they've got a plan. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they shape up when they go out into the big world. With REA backing is really interesting because obviously they went after Rightmove back in September to the tune of 6.4 billion. Is this, are they just trying to take a few 100 million off the price of the
Like a
move?
rounding error to that, isn't it?
I know exactly, by backing a competitor and just seeing if they could, yeah, just get a little bit cheaper later on. I don't know. But no, again, it's worth having a look at, Jitty. It is a good site run by great people. But yeah, look, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the 3.8 million. All right, so more portal news and more relaunches and so on. Now, this is again still within the UK, over in Northern Ireland. So we got news that one of the portals out in Northern Ireland is called Property News. It was taken over by its main competitor, Property Pal, recently, and Property News has just had a relaunch after it's got some significant investment from those guys. And now, actually, both of them have been taken over by essentially the right move of the Republic of Ireland, which is called daft.ie. Insert various jokes here. So yeah, look, it seems like a really interesting space. And the fact that Daft have decided that they're going to essentially unite both sides of the border over in the island of Ireland is, I think, really interesting because frequently cross-border portal joinings together have not always come off if you look at
Mm.
around Europe and stuff.
No, and sometimes you might look at it and say it's a quite a small footprint compared to some of those cross borders from within Europe, but it's still quite a large step. And I've done some work with Daft or Daft, as you said at the start there, and I help them with portal feeds from the CRM. So it'll be interesting to see. I know they're promising enhanced digital house hunting experiences for users in the region. And we'll wait and see what they look like. In the same region, Offer, OFFR, has made a bit of an indent into the way that they've digitized their offer, as the name gives away, approach in Ireland, because it's slightly different from what we do in England, Wales and Scotland. But it'd be now that they've got that investment and that consolidation to see where they take it next.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, offers a really interesting business. And again, there's some great people there. And I think that it's, yeah, if that's then being united behind it as well, or at least being made available to more people, I think that can only be a good thing for the home buyers and sellers of the Northern Ireland area. All right, so even more portal news, but this time we're going, first of all, stateside, but certainly international. So the big news, and again, we've covered this sort of sporadically over time, but CoStar and Zillow are in this massive battle, essentially. And CoStar has now gone large. It has decided to sue Zillow for what it terms rampant copyright infringement. What it's saying is that Zillow has essentially been using tens of thousands of its images without authorization. So essentially what it's got is you've got 46,000 CoStar Group images having been used on the Zillow website that it is saying is copyrighted and have been infringed by Zillow. So yeah, I think this is the gloves, if they were on, have certainly come off here.
It's continuing to trade blows, isn't it? When we're getting sued in one direction and coming back in the other. In fact, no, sorry, Zillow were suing Compass and CoStar were bickering on the edges, weren't they? And now CoStar wading into the fight with it. But apparently, images allegedly bore CoStar's watermark, which seems pretty blatant, but I did say the word allegedly in there. CoStar is also claiming it's one of the largest copyright disputes in real estate tech history. So prop tech wars.
Come on. Yeah, no, always include the word allegedly, particularly as Andy Florence and CoStar are very litigious, or whatever the phrase is. So yeah, no, I think it's, yeah, look, as you say, the CoStar have been standing on the sidelines, goading Compass on to go fight, fight, and now they've joined in themselves. So yeah, I think this one is, yeah, it's going to run and run. I think if I'm Zillow, I may be looking around at some of the content people on the site, thinking you haven't just left us a massive problem here, because if that's proven, then yeah, there is a lot of compensation and yes, and other stuff that they're gonna owe CoStar. But yeah. Want to keep it.
I don't think that's going to mean that CoStar take their eye off the ball, though, does it? Because their acquisition of domain holdings has just been voted through by shareholders down in Australia, hasn't it?
$3 billion. All right, which is again not to be sniffed at. Let's face it. Yeah, look,
that's 3 billion Aussie dollars, isn't it? Which is about 1.9 billion US.
Yeah, so still chonky, and I think my concern, is that the phrase, certainly my eyebrow raise is around they're taking on the big three. right? So CoStar is trying to take on Zillow over in the States, as we've just heard, literally like in the courts as well as in the market. They're trying to take on REA Group in with Domain, and obviously they're trying to take on Rightmove with On the Market. So
Mm.
that is a lot. Any one of those is huge. But to take on all three at the same time is it's really punchy. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out. Maybe there was the opportunity, and it was they had to. The Domain is the only real challenger to realestate.com.au down in Australia, and yeah, so if maybe it was a now or never thing to dive in. But yeah, I do wonder about dilution of strategy and how do you actually keep all of those particular plates spinning. I think it's fair to say I've obviously been out on this tour talking to agents around the country. They haven't been blown away, I think it's fair to say, by CoStar and On the Market in terms of what the impact was versus what they suspected it was going to be against Rightmove. But yeah, all power to their elbow, and I think everybody who operates in any of the countries where there is a monopolistic dominant property portal, I think would be hoping that CoStar can make some kind of dent. Okay, we also have some other news from Down Under, which is the realestate.com.au, who we've just described as the dominant monopolistic portal down in Australia, has launched slightly underwhelming, I think it's fair to say, fresh features on its mobile app. And again, we just want to flag this up as it's a bit more of these kind of real incumbents trying to do a bit more tech, but it's just not great.
It's slightly underwhelming, especially given Australia is normally so advanced in terms of that marketing space. I know I repeat myself, but 5 to 10 years ahead of what we're doing. Obviously, vendor paid and landlord paid advertising helps with that. But it's spring down in Australia. They're gearing up for that spring market. REA or realestate.com.au is given its big spring launch for the agents coming in. They have the end of financial year in July. They're now coming into that period, and there's this big 5 AI driven features, and they do underwhelm to an extent, but they're putting out there things like immersive property walkthrough videos. I don't think it's like the Matrix dojo scene underwater, like we'll talk about later on in the show. I'd love it if that was the case, not in a Kevin Keegan sense. Instant property highlights, or being able to order reports direct. One that always interests me, the make an offer option, which in Australia they did really well on the leasing side of things, and we talked about that last week. And monthly marketing side. So it's a way of showing. I think when we talked about it a few weeks ago, they'd done an 78% price increase to their agent. So it's another one of saying we've taken a load of extra money off you. Here's some little features in a mobile app for you. But I think that wraps up the portal piece for this week. One of the bits of news that hit my radar this week, and I wanted to have a chat with you, Mal, was there was a 45-year-old agency, Peter Morgan Property Group down in Wales, founded in 1980. God, that makes me old. That's a year older than me. It was just rebranded as MRE, powered by EXP. And I'm intrigued to know why these quite well-established agencies on the high street are making these moves, and seeing if you'd had any insights from your property tour on this.
Yeah, no, we've had agents, obviously loads of independents, some of the sort of franchises, EXP guys as well. And look, I think that I think what EXP is doing is really interesting. And I think, obviously it's well known for a self-employed model and that sort of stuff. And there's some really great agents under that umbrella. And then now it's Adam Day, who's heading up over here, is marching out more into the sort of established independent market. And I've spoken to loads of agents, again, on this tour who have said, yeah, we've been approached by EXP and they've tried to get us to come across. And I think it's for a variety of reasons that the attraction, I think, is cost, right? I think that a lot of these agents, it is possible within the EXP, under the EXP umbrella, to get significant savings on various things. I think particularly it's on portals. I think you can actually sign up and it's hundreds of pounds rather than thousands. At this point, wonder, and I wonder whether that's going to persist. If, for example, I'm thinking of setting up my own business and I've got the option, and again, speaking to agents who've done this, of setting up on the high street and paying Rightmove £3,000, even if it's staggered over a couple of years per month versus a few £100 at EXP, then obviously the temptation is to move to EXP because it's cheaper and the costs are lower. So I wonder whether there's a little bit of kind of market engineering going on as well from Rightmove, where it's actually shoveling all of the pesky potential future pains in their backsides into EXP, which is far easier to potentially manage underneath one big umbrella than having them all having to be managed by their account managers. Again, I think any variety in the market is good. Anything that gives consumer options is good, as long as it's properly articulated and as long as it doesn't skew any other stuff. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think the fact that this Welsh business has now transferred it, all of its whole essentially stack over to EXP and all of its kind of marketing and things like that is interesting. Whether that's because of all of the positives or whether there's a few kind of negatives that they want to run away from is again interesting. And I think as Rightmove inevitably consistently continues to put up prices for all of its current agencies, whether that kind of inches some other agents into EXP's arms as well.
There does seem to be a big shift in the model, though, in terms of whether it's high street agents or more franchising. I know when with Repeat first went off to Australia in 2013, our market was maybe 80% sole owned and 20% franchising, and over there it was more 50-50. But it seems that obviously with the big change within LSL and the property franchise group was bringing all those franchise networks together, it does seem that I'm lumping self-employed agents in that same piece, that it does seem to be more of a move these days to where you have more control of your own destiny. And maybe part of it is include that. We obviously, Preston Baker flipped, didn't they, from being an independent to overnight all self-employed. So whether there's like the various factors, it might be that Rightmove one, it could be people wanting more control of destiny, but also the technology piece and the fact that, as you say, you get more economies of scale if you're buying your CRM from Loop, who EXP use, and you've got 600 users instead of your 5, then you're going to get those slightly reduced costs. But the other part that comes into play more in Australia, where I'm seeing it the other direction, where you've got the Ray White group who've always held on to their brand very strongly and now allowing self-employed agents or brokerages to actually put their name above the door, but with the Ray White stack. It's because of the technologies, that the exclusive technologies you only get if you become part of that network. And I'm not aware of any of those yet within the likes of EXP, but maybe there is something else in there that's luring people over.
Yeah, I think you can choose which. I think for the independents, and I think to your point about control and things like that, whether EXP is as a self-employed agent, I think you've obviously got control. I think some of if I'm an independent 3-brancher and then I'm moving across to EXP, that feels like I'm losing control a little bit because I'm suddenly having to report to somebody or at least abide by certain brand values and things like that. So I think there's a little loss of control there, which must be offset by something else for you to make that decision. But yeah, in terms of the sort of tech stack, I don't think the independent branches have to move to Loop and things like that. I think that there's still, although obviously the options there and it could be cheaper and so on. But yeah, no, I think if you look across, as you say, LSL and probably franchise group in general, it seems to be a bit of a tear right now, where actually you've got more and more agents joining that. Rightmove in the last few weeks, when it was announcing its half-year results, said it's seen an almost unprecedented growth in the number of actual agencies that are joining it. So yeah, I think it is something. It's an option, and I think it's an increasingly solid option for a lot of agents when they're thinking about setting up, and as you say now, when they're thinking about what they're going to do over the next 3 to 5 years with their current business. Yeah. See, I did manage to turn that into portals as well. Just notice that. Anyway, nice. Moving on, we have now got to talk much more about AI and tech news. All right, man. Again, there is loads here, but I am reminded that I need to, first of all, point to your first sentence on our notes. You'd be amazed. Actually, we do have notes for this podcast. We actually have an idea of what we're talking about. What did you ask in the first bit of the AI tech news, Matt?
It wasn't so much an ask, was it? It was just as a gentle reminder, because everyone now is leading towards this view that the 5th of August, Tuesday, the 5th of August, is when ChatGPT 5's going to drop. And unless you edit this out, that could easily come back to haunt me when the show notes.
I'm not editing anything, so no. So which is tomorrow. But by the way, we're recording this on Monday, the 4th of August, so it's not like it's dropped today and we're ignoring it. So yeah, so we're recording in the evening, Monday the 4th. But yeah, ChatGPT 5, isn't it? That's what we're all waiting for.
That's it. And but why do we need it when OpenAI's just hit 12 billion in annualized revenue?
True. Yeah, I think the only reason is because they've got the latest figures say 5.492 billion monthly active users. That's from May. So 5.5 billion, okay, out of a population of the world of what, 8 million, 8.5 billion, sorry, 8.5 billion. So yeah, that's chunky. That's huge. And it's grown like.
How many ChatGPT accounts do you have?
Actually, that's a fair point. I've got a business one, I've got a personal one. So yes, I've got a couple. Yeah.
I listen to some people who seem to talk about having 10 or 15 different versions. I've got one for me and then one for a company I work with. For those ones who want a ChatGPT account for every finger on their hand, maybe we're skewing the figures. But when it gets to billions, that sample set of 2 maybe is not a great one. But I think was it in the OpenAI revenue has doubled over the first 7 months of 2025, getting up to that 12 billion figure.
Yeah, it's insane. So yeah, and when you look across the whole of generative AI apps, they've doubled their revenue as a group. So 1.7 billion downloads in the first half of 2025. So again, that is just off the scale, insane growth. And I think it really points to where we're going with this. Now, again, going around the country, speaking to agents, there's a lot of agents who are just started to dip their toe in the water with ChatGPT. Almost everybody's heard of it now, which may not have been the case when I started out at the end of May. But yeah, it's now become something that actually is starting to really seep into because there is a spectrum from high adopters all the way through to people who basically only use it for property descriptions. But yes, it is increasingly the thing that people are using to search, such replacing Google. And yeah, when they're defaulting talking about AI, they talk about ChatGPT in the same way as we used to talk about Google and search.
Incredible.
All right, that's a bit about open AI. And we can't really leave the big sort of frontier model conversation without talking about poor little Tim Cook. Bless him, of Apple, once the biggest company in the world and pretty much, yeah, most of the tech stack that I'm looking at right now. But yes, he said to employees yesterday, I think, that Apple must win in AI. And we had a little bit of a chuckle, didn't we, when we were looking at this earlier? Because Apple's not great at AI.
And not only that, Tim Cook has confirmed that AI is now Apple's top strategic priority. And then to cast your mind back, it was only a few weeks ago we were joking with just at the fact that they'd rebranded it Apple Intelligence, and the iPhone 16 that I bought and no one else has got an AI button on the side of it. And actually, maybe they should go out and buy Perplexity or some Anthropic to actually catch up. But it feels to me a bit like the sort of Churchillian sort of battle cries that we heard during COVID from certain MDs and CEOs, be like, pull through this together, but actually without necessarily having a plan. Although they have restructured again, haven't they? Their entire engineering department, a bit more focus on it.
Just so disappointing. Do you know what I mean? It's just Apple have always just had that reputation for being really slick, really good. But it would be great to see them in the mix. Actually, there's almost you miss them with their kind of just the quality side of things. You just knew what you were going to get, right? It was always going to be good. And now they've really tarnished their brand, I think, a little bit with all this noise. As you said, the complete nonsense of Apple Intelligence, which was basically the marketing team getting way ahead of the engineering team. And yeah,
Well, not necessarily Apple, but in businesses in our industry.
listen, I'm with the marketeers all the way. Come
Yeah,
on, you.
of course you are. I'm on the product side.
Stop slacking. But yeah, it's just there is just such a disconnect there. So yeah, look, it's a shame. But yeah, it just reminded me of old man raging at clouds, shaking his fist, going, "We've got to be better. We've got to do this," and everyone just going, "Mate, you've missed it. It's gone. It's way gone." So that is Apple's dilemmas. We've also got some stuff coming out of Google. They're rolling out a Gemini Deep Think. Okay. And again, this is a reasoning model that argues with itself across a variety of different dimensions. And then we've got Manus, our old friend, Manus AI from China. It debuts its wide research, which essentially will do even more deep research, but wider as well.
It's almost like these ideas of a storm of agents, isn't it? Or a multiverse of agents going off and doing things, the same thing, but over multiple channels. And I think it's Blitzy, one of the coding tools that you can set on old monolithic repos that goes off and writes the code so many times and then gets that reviewed by other agents. The idea that we're just literally setting whole teams to task on these upgrades. And I think the one that interested me that came out of Google this week, DeepThink obviously being really interesting, but moving the sort of dial slightly, is Notebook LM, which I remember you and again talk about Property Portal Watch last year. You stood up on the stage and said to the room about Notebook LM, and I thought, oh, most people are going to know this, but the number of people who took that away, and I think even Simon Baker said, oh, I've actually put together a podcast using Notebook. So for anyone who's not used Notebook LM, you can upload your resources, your PDFs, your documents, links to other websites, and ask Notebook LM to create you an audio overview, and it becomes two really quite slick podcasters chatting to each other and giving you the insight in about a half hour's worth of audio. So you can actually listen to the content rather than having to read through all these documents. So Renters' Rights Bill would be a great example at the moment, where there's a lot of real quite grey matter to read through. Be able to create quite an interactive audio overview of that. But then the latest version is with video summaries as well. So actually creates you almost a TEDx style presentation to go alongside it.
Can't wait. But yeah, it's not out, or at least I haven't got access to it yet. It is coming to all English-speaking countries apparently soon. Quote, this is Google soon, which could be weeks. But yeah, no, it looks super exciting. Yeah, like you say, the whole kind of when it landed, when Notebook LM first landed, it was just so incredible to hear just these essentially sounded like podcast presenters just chatting away perfectly naturally about what was going on. One of the really interesting use cases that we were playing around with here was actually putting links to property descriptions in it. So essentially, what you then got, so say if you're driving to an appointment or whatever, you actually got two podcast hosts talking about your property listing and giving you really interesting angles on it and different kind of ways to articulate some of the benefits and things like that. So have a little play with that if you get a moment. So Notebook LM, as Matt says, chuck in a link to one of your property descriptions and see what they say. But then when video is out as well, video overview, you'll then be able to see somebody chatting about it in a video too. It'd be really good.
And on the same theme, sorry, Matt, I was just
No, go on.
realised on the same theme, we've also got ChatGPT's released its study mode for students, hasn't it? So a very educational set of use cases coming out at the moment.
Yeah, as a parent of a 16-year-old who's just gone through GCSEs, it's a bit late. But anyway, yes, this study mode is essentially, rather than just giving kids, students, the answers to everything, it encourages them to think through the answer themselves. So yeah, again, really important. Obviously a bit defensive and a bit, no, we're not ruining everybody's brains by just giving them the answers all the time. But yeah, again, I think that this is all as we're learning as we go through this, can be an explosion of different use cases and different types of tech and different models. I think all of these things are going to be important to the sort of ecosystem so that there are answers to parents whose kids perhaps haven't yet gone through GCSEs and maybe mine as he goes through A levels. We can make sure that he is actually thinking hard about answers to questions instead of just chatting into his phone and getting given to him straight off the bat.
For anyone who's on a continuous learning path there, Mal, it doesn't just have to be school kids.
You're right. Thank you.
Right, hashtag growth mindset.
Thanks very much indeed. Yes, I was in fact very much discriminating against those as well. So thank you for
You're welcome. That's what I'm here for. A bit of balance.
That's right. It's my raging. Excellent. Good. So yeah, that's pretty much about all of the frontier models for now. Wait until tomorrow. But yes, in this little slight tiny void, interestingly, we see that there's an AI generated ad that's appeared in Vogue that has been causing all sorts of pearl clutching. So it's for Guess jeans or Guess, I don't know, glamour, whatever. And essentially it's an AI model. And it's appeared in this advert, and Vogue has allowed the advert into its magazine for its July edition, and everyone has gone nuts because it's, oh my God, even Vogue is now allowing AI models into its hallowed pages. So yeah, look, I think that I don't know how many times we're going to have everybody throwing their arms up in the air and wailing and gnashing of teeth about how this can be possibly allowed. But I think it's everywhere now, right? We've had music, we've had these ad models, TV shows now have got little bits of car explosions and stuff that are AI generated in. I think it's pretty much going to come and help to, or at least become part of our lives in every way, in every avenue. So that's the AI models in Vogue. Next up, we want to have a very quick trip into our AI tool of the week. Okay, Matt, this is really good, isn't it? So Runway Aleph, tell us more.
So Runway, to start with, is the video generation tool that's been around for a fair while now, right? It's probably a couple of years, and obviously in the same way that the generative AI's models get released, the same happens for the video generation and the audio generation, etc. And Runway Aleph is the latest iteration of Runway's video generation model. And it really hit home for me just how amazing this is. Because when we say about video generation, you did something with, I think it was Runway, when you were up at the Etihad earlier this summer and you took a photo and created a video from that. And it's when you watch these videos, so you touched on there, the Argentinian Netflix program that destroyed a building that it wouldn't have been able to normally film with the budget it had. And it just looks the same as if they'd actually blown up a building. West Ham fans who watch the bowling ground get blown up at the end of the Hammers' time before they moved to the London Stadium could think, oh, maybe we could have kept the building if we'd have just had Runway Aleph. But when I was at the gig on Wednesday, actually, my best mate, he's a TV producer, video editor, and he had the scene from The Matrix where Neo is fighting Lawrence Fishburne's character, Morpheus, in the dojo. And he's had the cartridge plugged into the back of his head and he says, I know Kung Fu. And the fight scene's incredible. But Runway Aleph had taken that and put it underwater in a swimming pool. And just the physics and the lighting and the movement were absolutely spectacular. And just power and speed that these work out. In fact, you and I were at Property Academy a couple of weeks ago, and we saw that footage from, I think it was LNER, where they'd had a family on a train to shoot the joys of catching the LNER train up to York or Newcastle, wherever it was. And it was all filmed really nicely. But the feedback was, we really like it, but it's been filmed in portrait. Can you make it landscape? And rather than having to get the crew together and get back on the train and reshoot it, they were able to put it into Runway. And with that sort of simple prompt, Runway filled in the gaps and used the same actors and everything else, but just meant that they didn't need to reshoot the entire situation. Incredibly powerful. And it's a tool that people are using as part of their standard arsenal, isn't it now?
Yeah, 100%. And I think this kind of plays into sort of the whole conversation going back to what we were talking about on Vogue and things like that. That AI is coming into everything. And this isn't to denigrate creators or models or artists or anything like that. Just like when the synthesizer came into music and everyone went, oh my God, this electric music is not real music. It is. And actually, it's just a different way of doing the same stuff. So I do think that there is a lot of worry and concern around what does this mean for everybody. Basically, it will change things, yes, but actually what you need to do is sit there with all the tasks that you do, the jobs that you do, work out, split them up into little tasks, and then work out whether AI can do those little tasks better or more cost effectively than you can do them right now. And that's where really AI is going to come in. And as you've said, with the Runway, with the Aleph, with that LNER advert, what they've done is they've worked out that actually AI is really good at this particular thing. So we've still got loads of the other stuff going on. And I think that's pretty much how humanity has developed ever since. Yeah, so I do think that there's a natural worry, and again, I see it out on my tour all the time. But yeah, I do think that we just got to make sure that we don't get too concerned about how are we going to deal with all this when humans have been doing this like forever. It's just progress.
I've just got Baba O'Reilly looping around in my head now, so thanks for that.
Sorry. Rant over. Tell you what, should we discuss weird AI of the week?
Absolutely. Given I'm going to go to an Airbnb from Friday for a couple of weeks, let's make sure I'm covered on this one.
Let's dive in. Okay, so the reason for this, so first of all, the story is an Airbnb guest basically was reported by the Airbnb host for damaging various bits of an apartment, including a table, and was charged thousands and thousands of pounds, £12,000 for essentially making damage to this particular apartment because they were living there for quite a while. But actually what they then did, that the actual guest, was they went back and proved to Airbnb themselves that actually the photos were inconsistent. So they looked very similar, but the cracks that were supposed to be in this table particularly actually weren't exactly the same on the two different images. So what's really happened here is the host has tried to get Airbnb to give them, or to get the guest to give them money as a result of some damage that didn't exist. And I think this is why we're here, right? We want to help you to know that these kinds of things can happen. So if, for example, you are renting property out and you've got kind of things that are happening, you've got photo evidence and things like that, it's really important that you just make sure, particularly if there's some conflict. So you've got a tenant saying one thing, you've got a landlord saying something else or whatever. Just make sure that you've eyeballed it yourself, because I do think that there is more and more opportunity. People talk about you can get a fake passport now, an image of a passport photo made by ChatGPT that is insanely good. So yeah, just be mindful that there is very real opportunity, even in really small, mundane things, for people to essentially create images that look very real but are not. That is our weird AI of the week. All right, that is also the end of this week's show. Matt, thanks very much indeed, mate.
No, thanks to you, Mal. It's nearly the end of your European tour or world tour, UK tour, whatever it's been. Resilience tour.
Yes, resilience. Right move. Yes, resistance tour. Yeah, no, this week is the final one. So anybody who happens to be in Bradford, Lancaster, Glasgow, Edinburgh, Aberdeen, Dundee, Middlesbrough, Newcastle, come along. I'll be there. I'll be looking quite tired. But yes, no, it's going to be great. It's been a series of events, really great agents we've been out to see. All very exciting. Plenty more to talk about, obviously, in the weeks and months ahead. But yes, I'm going to be very tired this weekend.
Drive safely.
Pardon?
Drive safe.
I will. I've got some new brake pads because I need them. So I'm safer than ever. Anyway, listen, thanks so much everybody for listening in. And we will catch up with you again next week for even more on the Property AI Report. Thank you very much indeed, Matt.
Good to see you, Mal. Have a great week, everyone.
Enjoy. Take care. Thanks, guys. Bye.